Look at our planet from space. It is a familiar marble of blue and white, but this blue is deceptive. The Pacific Ocean is not just an ocean. It is a liquid continent, a void so vast it could swallow all the world's land masses and still have room to spare. Now, look closer, zoom in on this empty expanse. This is the Polynesian Triangle, 10 million square miles of ocean. To put that in perspective, the area of the United States is less than 4 million square miles. This triangle is more than twice that size. And 98% of it is empty water. Dotted within this void are the most remote islands on Earth, tiny, isolated specks of land separated by thousands of miles of the most dangerous, unpredictable ocean on the planet. And yet, every single one of them was found, settled, colonized. By whom? Not by Europeans with their magnetic compasses and sextants, not by modern explorers with GPS, but by a people from the Stone Age. A culture that possessed no maps, no writing, no metal tools, and no instruments of navigation. For centuries, Western explorers and academics refused to believe it. They argued these islands must have been settled by accident, by lost fishermen or storm-blown canoes drifting aimlessly, washing ashore by pure, dumb luck. Because the alternative was impossible. How do you sail against the prevailing winds and currents for thousands of miles? How do you find a target, an island just a few miles wide, in the middle of a 10 million square mile haystack? And how do you do it again, intentionally, carrying your families, your animals, and your plants to start a new world? This is not a story of luck, or this is the story of the single greatest feat of exploration in human history. It is the story of an ancient science, a secret system of navigation so sophisticated it existed entirely within the human mind. They didn't just drift, they knew. This is the story of the voyagers, and this is how they conquered the Pacific. Our story does not begin in Polynesia. It begins, paradoxically, in the mountains of Taiwan over 3,500 years ago. Here, a group of people known to archaeologists as the Lapita culture began to do something no human had ever done before. They weren't just hugging the coastlines, they were pushing out into the unknown, into what they called the Sea of Islands. They were the original astronauts of the ocean. Over centuries, they hopped from island to visible island, carrying their distinctive pottery, their language, and their transportable landscape. The essential ingredients for a new life: taro, breadfruit, yams, and pigs, chickens, and dogs. By 900 BC, they had reached a cluster of islands that would become the cradle of Polynesian culture, Tonga and Samoa. And then they stopped. For nearly 2,000 years, the expansion ceased. Archaeologists call it the long pause. This wasn't a brief rest. This was 80 generations living and dying, looking eastward at an endless, empty horizon. Why did they stop? Perhaps the ocean beyond was simply too vast, the winds too hostile. Perhaps the technology wasn't ready. Or perhaps the motivation wasn't there. Whatever the reason, for 2 millennia, the greatest human expansion on Earth paused until sometime around 800 AD, when something changed. A new drive, a new technology, and a new generation of navigators emerged from this cradle. They didn't just look at the empty ocean, they aimed for it. And this time, they would not stop until they had found everything. To accomplish the impossible, you first need an impossible vessel. The West had its caravels, its galleons, plodding, deep-drafted ships designed to fight the sea. The Polynesians developed something far more elegant, a masterpiece of Neolithic engineering born from the materials of their islands, the Wa'a Kaulua in Hawaiian, or Waka Moana, the great double-hulled voyaging canoe. Do not call this a simple boat. This was a voyaging machine. First, the double hull. 2 parallel, narrow hulls, often over 60 feet long, carved from massive tree trunks. This design made it virtually impossible to capsize in the massive swells of the open Pacific. It provided a wide, stable platform, a portable island to carry dozens of people, their supplies, and their future. Second, the speed. Unlike a European ship that plows through the water, the narrow hulls of the Vaca sliced with the water. They were light, flexible, lashed together with coconut fiber rope, sennit, so the entire structure could twist and bend, absorbing the ocean's energy instead of fighting it. And then the engine, the revolutionary crab claw sail. This distinctive triangular sail was a marvel of aerodynamics. It allowed the canoe to do something that was critical for exploration: sail against the wind. This is the key. They weren't just drifting with the wind. They were directing their journey, tacking upwind at sharp angles, choosing their destination. This is the difference between being a victim of the ocean and being its master. Boy, sar. This vessel could average over 100 miles a day, sustaining speeds that European explorers wouldn't match for centuries. It was the fastest, safest, most efficient long-distance vessel of its time. It was the hardware. This hardware was the key to surviving the journey. But the software, the navigator's mind, was the key to knowing where to go. And if you appreciate this kind of deep dive into human history and impossible achievements, take a moment to subscribe. It helps us continue to navigate and explore these stories, because the hardware is useless without the software. And this is where the true genius lies. The Polynesian navigator, the Po-E-O, did not sit at a helm with a map. He, or she, often sat in the belly of the canoe, in the dark. They didn't navigate by sight. They navigated by feel. Their map was not on paper. It was etched into their memory. Their compass was not in their hand. It was the entire dome of the sky. This system, known as wayfinding, is one of the most complex intellectual achievements in human history. Imagine you are a young apprentice navigator. You will spend 20 years memorizing everything. You must learn the names and positions of over 200 stars, not just where they are, but their precise path from the moment they rise on the eastern horizon to the moment they set in the west. This is the foundation of your system, the star compass. This is not a magnetic compass, it is a mental compass. The navigator divides the horizon into 32 equal houses. Each house is the exact point where a specific star rises and another specific star sets. To sail east, the navigator tells the steersman to aim the canoe at the house where Hokulea, Arcturus, is rising. As Hokulea rises higher in the sky, its navigational value is gone. But the navigator already knows which star will rise next in that same house, and then the next. He has a perfect, clockwork procession of stars rising and setting, providing a constant, reliable directional guide throughout the entire night. But what about finding a specific island? How do you find a tiny speck like Hawaii lost in the northern hemisphere? This is where the system becomes breathtaking. The navigators understood the heavens were a celestial sphere. They knew that as you sail north or south, the altitude of the stars changes. This is the concept of latitude sailing. A navigator leaving Tahiti for Hawaii knows his destination is at a specific latitude. He doesn't know latitude as a number. He knows it as a picture in the sky. He knows that when he reaches the latitude of Hawaii, the Southern Cross will hang exactly one handspan with his arm outstretched above the southern horizon. So, he sails north, using his star compass to keep his line true. Every night, he checks the altitude of his guiding stars. When the Southern Cross is in its perfect position, he stops sailing north. He knows he is on the correct line. He is now on the latitude of Hawaii. All he has to do is turn the canoe west and sail. He knows that a 200-mile wide chain of islands lies on this line. He just has to hold his course. But what happens when the stars are gone? What about a cloudy night or the entire day? The sun, of course, is a guide. The navigator memorizes its rising and setting points for every day of the year, but the sun is only useful at sunrise and sunset. What about the long, empty hours of daylight? This is where the Po'o graduates from an astronomer to a true master of the ocean. He must read the unseen signs. And the most important sign is the ocean itself. The ocean is not a flat, uniform surface. It is a complex, moving text full of information. A navigator must first ignore the local waves, the chatter created by the local wind. He is searching for something deeper. The swells. Swells are the long, powerful, rolling waves generated by massive storm systems thousands of miles away. They are consistent. They travel in a straight line for thousands of miles. A dominant swell from the southeast, for example, will always be from the southeast, day or night, wind or no wind. The navigator uses his own body as the ultimate instrument. He lies down in the hull. He can feel the canoe's pitch and yaw. He feels the rhythm as the canoe rises on the face of one swell and falls into the trough, only to be lifted by the next. By feeling this rhythm, he can keep the canoe on a perfect line relative to this deep, underlying swell, holding his course for days on end, even in total blindness. But the swells tell him even more. They tell him when an island is near. An island, even a low-lying atoll, is a solid object in a liquid medium. As these deep swells encounter an island, they bend around it. This is refraction. Miles before the island is visible, the navigator will feel a change in the rhythm. He will feel the swell pattern become confused as the single dominant swell is disrupted by these new bent waves. He can feel the shadow of an island over the horizon. If the island has steep cliffs, the swells will reflect, bouncing back out to sea. The navigator will feel a rebound swell, a wave pattern moving against the dominant pattern. He is reading a map of ghost waves, a map of islands that are still 50 miles away, completely invisible to the eye. And he adds more data. Clouds. He watches the clouds. The high, volcanic islands of the Pacific create their own weather. A cloud that remains stationary on the horizon is not a cloud. It is a signpost snagged on the peak of a mountain, a low greenish tint on the underside of a cloud. That is the reflection of the bright turquoise water of a lagoon. Birds. He watches the birds. A frigate bird may soar for days over the open ocean, but a tern or a booby, they must return to land at night to roost. In the evening, he sees a flock of terns flying with purpose. He follows them. They are going home, and they will lead him directly to land. The water. He smells the water, he tastes it, he trails his hand, feeling for changes in temperature. He watches for floating debris, a coconut, a branch, signs that land is near. This is not navigation. This is a total, immersive, sensory communion with the ocean. The navigator is not on the ocean. He is part of it. Armed with this hardware and this software, the Polynesians exploded out of their cradle from 800 to 1200 AD. In a burst of energy that staggers the imagination, they performed their final greatest leaps. They sailed south against the roaring 40s to find the long white cloud of Aotearoa, New Zealand, the largest, richest land in the Triangle. They sailed southeast on the longest, loneliest voyage of all to find a speck of volcanic rock so isolated it is almost incomprehensible, Rapa Nui, Easter Island. And they sailed north, across the equator, using the star compass and the latitude of the heavens, to find the archipelago that would become the apex of their culture, Hawaii. They had done it. They had settled every habitable island in 10 million square miles. They had connected a liquid world. And then, the knowledge was almost lost. With the arrival of European ships, compasses, and colonization, the old ways were dismissed. The Vaka Moana were replaced. The navigators had no one to teach. The complex, unwritten libraries of the mind began to die. By the 1970s, it was believed this entire science was gone, extinct. The academics who had long claimed the Polynesians were just lucky drifters felt vindicated. They were wrong. In 1975, in Hawaii, a group of visionaries in the Polynesian Voyaging Society built a performance-accurate replica of a voyaging canoe. They named her Hokulea, the Star of Gladness, the Hawaiian name for Arcturus. Their plan, to sail from Hawaii to Tahiti over 2,500 miles, with no instruments. But they had a problem. There was not a single navigator left in all of Polynesia who remembered how to make the journey. The knowledge was found, but not in Polynesia. It was found in Micronesia on the tiny atoll of Satawal. There, a man named Maupiailug, a Po, still held the ancient knowledge. He was flown to Hawaii. He looked at the maps of the young Hawaiians. He famously brushed them aside and said, "I will show you the way." In 1976, Maupiailug, a man who had never seen Hawaii, who did not use a compass or a map, guided Hokulea perfectly from Hawaii to Tahiti. He proved in one single defiant journey that the impossible was real. He proved that the ancestors were not drifters. They were scientists. They were masters. His act ignited a cultural renaissance that burns to this day. The knowledge is no longer dying. It is being taught. The canoes are sailing again. This story of knowledge lost and then refound is one of the most powerful in modern history. What part of the wayfinding science do you find most incredible? The star compass, or the ability to read the ghost-like swells of the ocean? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. The story of the Polynesian voyagers is more than a history of navigation. It is a testament to the limitless potential of the human mind. We are obsessed today with our hardware, our phones, our satellites, our GPS. We have outsourced our memory to the cloud. The Polynesian navigator reminds us of the power of our software, the power of a mind that is trained, focused, and aware. They learned to carry a complete library of the heavens in their heads. They learned to read the subtle language of the ocean swells. They learned to find life in the flight of a single bird. They looked at an ocean that others saw as an empty, terrifying barrier. And they saw a road, a network of pathways written in the source, the sea, and the wind. They were not lost fishermen. They were and are the greatest navigators the world has ever known.